Come on, Livingston, we're gonna go on and on and on. Together we can make it. We're gonna go on and on and on. Come on, Livingston.
Knocks it through. Mullen bursting into the box. Josh Mullen.
Together we can make it.
Mullen's ball across. It's turned in. It's Pittman who's got it. Livingston leads.
Road is long.
Now can they get the ball back in? O'Brien.
Lead! And Livingston have the lead.
Man, score.
If we march to
The full-time whistle blows and David Hayes celebrates. And the Livingston fans join in exultation.
come on, Livingston.
Livingston have the lead against Rangers, and they are certainly rising to a few occasions on their return to the top flight in Scotland.
Come on, Livingston. We're gonna
Hello and welcome back to TalkLivi, our podcast dedicated to Livingston Football Club. This week it's another special edition as COVID-19 and lockdown continues across the country. My name's Euan and I'm joined by Calum and Andy as usual. We are of course still being socially responsible and are coming to you via Zoom, so apologies if the audio isn't great, but we are trying our best to bring you something during this difficult time. Anyway, coming up this week, we take a look back at the very controversial vote to end the lower league season and to put the Premiership on the brink of ending prematurely. We give our thoughts on the arguments following the results and look at the reconstruction proposals.
Calum and Euan spoke to Livi Cup winning legend Scott Mclaughlin earlier in the week. Scott spoke in depth about his time with Livi, playing under and alongside some Livi greats, and talks us through some of those dark days during that turbulent spell in administration. One not to be missed, so listen out for that later on.
Finally this week we introduced Devlin's Dilemmas, a feature we've been doing across our social media over the last few weeks. We debate the dilemmas that Nicky has put to us, including this week's dilemma.
On our last episode, we discussed the consequences of the world pandemic COVID-19 and what effect it's having on Scottish football, how we proceeded and gave our thoughts. Since then, there's been much talked about vote, massively controversial decisions made, lower league relegations and promotions confirmed, 4,372 statements from various clubs, 4,300 being from the club that was formerly known as Rangers, an independent investigation into the vote, an EGM organised. No one can ever say Scottish football is dull, and even though there's no games, it's still been pretty entertaining. So the question now is, where do we go from here? What did we make of all the vote kind of stuff, and thoughts on reconstruction?
Yeah, it's been a bit of a sham, hasn't it? It's one of the ones, you don't want to criticise the SPFL because I think we spoke about it in depth in the last episode about what a tough decision it would be and one that we wouldn't really want to make. But they've made a bit of a pig's ear, haven't they? Saying that there was a deadline and then there wasn't a deadline, and then submitting a statement when all the clubs hadn't voted, but they had voted and then they hadn't, and then there was a no vote in the email box, and then it changed to a yes vote. They've made it really difficult for themselves.
It's hilarious in a way, but it's also slightly embarrassing. It doesn't make us look good. We always talk about this, the tin pot sort of element of Scottish football and how the league's better than it is, and then you've got stuff like this. And it doesn't really reflect well on the league or any of the leagues at all, really.
I mean, I'm going to defend the SPFL a wee bit in that Dundee had cast their vote. Now, be it technical glitches on that coming through, then they've contacted to say discard vote. And they've then been left in that position of power. The only thing I would say with the SPFL is that I don't think they should have released the votes as of 5 p.m. That's the only thing I would probably say, which would have taken away any elements of doubt with the integrity of the vote or anything like that. But again, I kind of agree with I think there was maybe a bit of conflict on the voting dates. I think they'd set a preference for it to be 5 p.m. on the Friday, when in reality teams actually had 28 days to reply to. I think it was 28 days anyway, or something along those lines. So I feel for the SPFL quite a bit, because they've been put in a position that nobody would expect. But I also think other clubs are quite responsible for what's ended up materialising.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head in terms of publishing an incomplete vote was probably their first major mistake. I think if they'd came out with a statement, because I get what they're saying, that this whole Q&A thing that they've done, I get what they're saying, that if they didn't produce any sort of statement, clubs would then be saying, why is this not been published yet, this, that and the next thing, press would be all over it, fans would be criticising them. But I think a simple statement of, we asked it to be in by 5 p.m. on such and such a date, but it's not a necessity. As of just now, there's 2 or 3 clubs that still haven't voted, and left it at that. And that would have been a fairly open statement, and left everybody under no illusions that, okay, there's still teams to vote, but there's no dilemma there then. There's no sort of, there's 1 club or 2 clubs that have got a cast and voting. At that stage, nobody, if they'd left it at that, no one would have known. Whereas the way they'd done it, 1 club, everybody kind of had rumours, and it eventually came out that it was Dundee, all this carry on, that they voted and it never went to the right place. It all just leaves a bit of a sour taste in a lot of, and especially the clubs that are affected by it, Hearts, Partick Thistle, Stranraer, they're going to feel hard done by. They were going to feel hard done by anyway. But the way it's been done and carried out, it leaves a sour taste in their mouth, I think.
Yeah, it was all pretty common knowledge, wasn't it? You were saying there about all the rumours and things. But I found it personally, it was really easy to, get access to information, see what clubs have voted for what. And I don't think that should have been the case. I think it should have been kept private until everything had come out, and the resolution would have either passed or failed with those votes. No outside influence, anything like that. And we've got all this investigation talk and everything, all this rubbish. But moving on to the reconstruction, the Livingston, the club, have we actually put together a proposal. What would you think on that?
Personally, with the proposal, I'm not overly fussed about reconstruction. I said this last time. I'm quite happy with the way the setup is. The only thing that gripes on me is the way that the playoffs and the Championship are stacked in favour of the Premiership club. Obviously, we were successful in getting through those playoffs, but had we finished third that season, for example, we might have not been able to do what we did, because it's so heavily stacked against you. That's my only real gripe with it all. I think if you were to go to the 3 leagues of 14, I've seen a few of the lower league players. I saw Bobby Barr and Cy Ferry talking about it on Twitter. They weren't very happy with it because it penalises both their clubs as a result, having to go into the bottom tier. If you go to the 14 and 310s, then it doesn't affect. Well, Kelty and Brora then get promoted, which I agree they deserve the opportunity of having won their respective leagues. Whereas if you go to the 314s, neither of them get promoted, and they're being punished as a result of reconstruction. So it's one of those things that nobody's going to come out of it. It's trying to appease the majority rather than the minority. It's one of those situations again. What I would like to know is, does anyone know what Rangers' thoughts are on the whole situation? Because I've not heard an awful lot from them.
Your voice of opinion, I reckon.
Yeah. Avoiding that Rangers question, Euan, and going back to the original question from Calum. Reconstruction, it's a difficult one. I think we all know it's going to be tough to get reconstruction through. We've all spoke about it. It's heavily weighed in favour of the old firm. I think it's 11 votes to 1 for Premiership reconstruction for a start. Is that going to happen? It's a difficult one. Yeah. And then you're talking about the 3 groups of 14. I read an article about the 14s and that all the League 2 clubs had agreed on this. just doesn't sit right with me that there's a massive conflict of interest in terms of Brecon. Now, I believe the Brecon chairman's on the board that's came up with this plan, which protects them for relegation to the Lowland League. So there's your first conflict of interest. You've got Anne Budge on the board for the reconstruction panel. There's another conflict of interest. I think the SPFL have played a blinder putting Anne Budge in there, because if it goes all Pete Tong, the Hearts have only got Anne Budge to blame. They've not got the SPFL to blame. I can't see it happening. In terms of Livingston's proposal, it was probably the proposal that I looked at as well. The 14 teams, which would obviously then mean that Hearts don't get relegated. The split is 6-8, which means that obviously the top teams don't play as many games as the bottom 8 teams, because I think it was a 6-8 split. Also, to me, that makes sense, because your teams in the top half are then getting to play against Rangers and Celtic again at home, whereas the bottom half will get that extra 4 games, so that extra bit of income from those games. Also, it benefits just about everybody. In terms of the Lowland and the Highland League team would then get promoted to League 2. Your top 2 teams in each division would get promoted, so it benefits just about everybody. And that is the only thing. That's the only proposal I can see working. There was big talk about the 14 teams in the top flight splitting into 7. Don't like that at all, because you've then got a team sitting out. And I get what they're saying. Yep, you could look at the fixtures and go, right, the 7th place team doesn't have anything to play for, so they can sit out in the last weekend. But again, doesn't sit well with me. I don't like that at all. If they were going to do any kind of reconstruction, the 6-8 split would be how I went. But I'm with you, Euan. I think it'll not happen, and I think the league positions as it is now will stand. Hearts will be relegated, and we already know that obviously Partick Thistle and Stranraer are both relegated, and Dundee United and Raith Rovers are getting promoted. I think that's what will end up.
Yeah, no, I can't disagree with that. Looking at the Livi proposal, the 14, 10, 10 and 10, yeah, that would have been, if anything, the one that I would have gone for if obviously that was proposed. But yeah, personally, I think it's totally fine the way it is. I like the way the league sits with 12 teams, 6 and 6 split into the top and bottom 6, obviously. And I think it benefits us more just keeping it as it is. The only clubs it really benefits are the ones getting relegated. The likes of Hearts and Partick Thistle, which we have obviously touched on it in the previous episode, that it is slightly harsh them going down with games to play and things like that. But it's a global pandemic. Like they probably will come up next season, you could say. So again, it's not really. I don't think, for example, say if our club was in this position that Hearts are in, maybe the likes of Hamilton, Ross County, I don't think there's as much or maybe even any calls for reconstruction personally.
Yeah, I think because Hearts are one of the bigger clubs in the country, as you just touched on, Calum, if a club like ourselves were sitting bottom, I would highly doubt that there would be so much call for kind of reconstruction and things like that at this moment in time. It's not me being cynical about us as a club, etc. But we constantly read it on Twitter. They shouldn't be in the top flight. Shouldn't be in the top flight with a pitch with having no fans, etc. Nobody would want to protect us. So why should Livi go down routes and go out of their way to try and protect other clubs when they would chuck us under the bus quite happily?
Yeah, I think as well, when the whole the initial statement for the club, and again, I'm not going to go too much into it, but the initial statement we made in terms of what we would vote for, and then Hearts and Rangers fans were jumping on it, saying, "Oh, you're just looking after yourselves." Of course, we were looking after ourselves, just like every other club's looking after themselves. There's no secret that Livingston will look after ourselves and then think about the rest, just as Hearts are looking after themselves and Hibs are looking after themselves. There's just 2 examples. But in terms of obviously moving forward, we've now got the EGM proposal, and you touched on it earlier about Rangers with their 4,000 odd statements in regards to evidence that they've still not produced, and now they're saying that they're going to produce it next week. Have you got a problem with the EGM? Personally, before letting you guys talk about it, if they have evidence and if there is hardened proof and they release it, then I think we should be open in terms of, right, we need to start looking at the SPFL and try and rearrange it. But if they've not, where do we go? Because Rangers for years now have been making things difficult, shall we say, to put it politely, for the rest of Scottish football. So where do we go from here, and what's your thoughts on the EGM?
I think the EGM, you look, there's 3 clubs have voted for the EGM. There's not a mass demand for it, is my first kind of point. 2, I think, to be totally honest, Rangers have accused the SPFL of bullying. I think the sheer number of statements that they've released calling for guys to, be suspended or should resign, I think that borders on bullying. To be honest, I think they're bullying members of the SPFL board to try and get their own way. They keep talking about this evidence. Just show your hand. Stop. For me, it just reeks of smoke and mirrors. This whole evidence thing. I saw a good analogy on Twitter, and it was Rangers going into a police station and saying, "Oh, I've witnessed a murder." And they went, "What evidence do you have?" "Oh no, I'm not giving the evidence until the trial." And then they're going, "Well, that's not how it works." "Oh no, I want the fiscal prosecutor suspended immediately as a result." That's the thing I think with Rangers. I think they come across as the bullies in the situation, and if you've got this evidence which will sink the SPFL, show it. Just show it. For me, as I say, it just screams smoke and mirrors with Rangers to try and push through something that they want.
I think you're spot on. Show the evidence, because if they've got evidence and they show it, they're going to get people on their side that they probably don't have at the moment. Yeah. Us free for a start, we're getting a bit sicky. Well, I say sick. It's actually quite entertaining reading some of the Rangers statements, but show the evidence, and then you might get us free on side, and you might get a lot of other fans for other clubs on side. They might start coming around and going, actually, fair play, Rangers were spot on. But until they show that evidence, then it's very difficult to back them.
And you notice the 2 clubs that have backed it are Hearts and Stranraer, who are obviously directly affected by the whole situation.
I think throughout this whole period, I really don't think they've got a leg to stand on. Just with the whole resolution and stuff. Okay, they're not going to be wanting to be seen voting yes and giving Celtic the title and stuff, but they realistically weren't going to win it, and I just don't get their argument at all throughout the whole period. It's just meaningless, and it's just full of we're going to do the exact opposite of Celtic. But they partly believe maybe they could have caught them, but again, it's all this sporting integrity and all this nonsense. It's just to oppose Celtic, really, I think.
Yeah, that seems to be the go-to, this sporting integrity. It's getting a bit fed up reading it on social medias for Rangers fans and Rangers as the club's sporting integrity. It's
ironic.
Yeah, that's exactly the word I was looking for. But we'll not go down that road. But I think, it's a difficult situation we're all in. It'll be interesting to see in a week or 2 once the AGM's taken place, what evidence has came about and where we go from here. I think it'll be good for the whole of Scottish football if we try and move on, and hopefully we can go into a new season and things get back to normal and we just start enjoying the thing that we love, which is football. Euan and Calum spoke to one of our CIS Cup winning legends this week. The lads delve into Scott Mclaughlin's career with a specific look at his time with Livi. Scott talks us through his early career, playing under legends like Davy Hay and Jim Leishman, the dark and scary administration days, cup semi-finals and finals, and playing alongside some of Livi's greats throughout this time. So without any further delay, here it is.
This week on TalkLivi, we're delighted to welcome former midfielder Scott Mclaughlin. Scott, how you doing?
All good, mate. All good. Cracking on anyway through lockdown.
What are you doing to keep yourself busy then?
I'm just running every single day.
I've seen on Twitter, we'll come to that later on as well, like you have a wee plug at that.
So we'll just take you back to when you obviously first signed for Livingston. Back in 2002, you joined from Hamilton Accies. They'd just been promoted from the second division. So how did that move materialise?
It was through Tony Fitzpatrick. I knew Tony. I knew Tony was a youth coach at Livingston at the time. Tony had obviously knew me as a player, and there was a chance of me maybe moving on for Hamilton at the time. I still had a year in my contract, but there was a lot of money troubles at Hamilton at that time. So the chance to come to Livi came about, and it was Jim Leishman and Davy Hay that signed me. So it was a brilliant move for me at the time as well, because Livi just finished third in the SPL, so I was going to the third best team in Scotland, so it was a brilliant move for me.
Well, it was moves you can't really turn down at that age, eh?
Aye, definitely. I mean, especially with some of the players that were there, that was a big pull for me as well.
Obviously, must have been quite daunting as a young player, making that step up, kind of going for Hamilton, who had just won promotion to the second division, to a team that had just qualified to play European football. Was that quite daunting for you?
Not really. See, because I was always quite a wee gallus guy anyway, like wee guy from Glasgow who the wee bit of swag, and I always kind of backed myself to do all right in any team I played in. So no, I didn't really see it as daunting. I just seen it as a challenge to try and get in the first team. I'd also played in the first team at Hamilton, so my next step was to try and get in the first team at Livingston, albeit it was a big step up.
There were more experienced and quality players in the dressing room at the time. You touched on it earlier a wee bit as well. How much did you learn training with guys like Lee Makel, Burton O'Brien, Stuart Lovell, Keno, guys like that?
Oh, I learned massive amounts. I mean, I think I was actually there just before Burton, but you still had guys like Bingy there. He'd Lee Makel, wee Philippe Brancoin were there. Brotto was still in goals. So Quino was really, really underrated. I mean, nobody Livi fans use obviously know how good Quino was, but see, you try and tell people about Quino, I can't really remember him. It's just like, how can you remember him? I mean, you guys will know because you've seen him every week. It was different class, but
technically it was brilliant, wasn't it?
He's kind of the forgotten man, but sometimes through teams, you know what I mean?
You touched on kind of some of the players there as well, the likes of Makel, one of my favourite ever Livi players. I just thought he was different gravy really as a midfielder.
Makes is one of the guys I always looked up to, but he was very, very harsh on me. I think because he liked him as a player, but he was always moaning the face off me and putting lumps at me in training. But see, looking back now, when you get on, when you kind of get to mind, you know exactly what he was trying to do. He was trying to toughen you up and see if you could handle it. Whereas at the time, I just thought, you're thinking you're just a young boy thinking, why is this guy keeping following me about the park? Do you know what I mean?
A lot of Livi fans say that David Fernandez is probably their favourite ever player. Would you go along with that, with playing beside them?
Aye, Dave was a dream for a midfielder to play with. Just he's my ideal midfielder. See, I know a lot of people like to get their strikers in behind, but Dave always wanted to come in and take it into feet and link up the play. So see, as a midfielder, and you got the ball and you played it, you knew he was coming short into your feet. Even a bad ball would make it look a good ball just because he was that strong, and he always kind of read where the ball was going to go before it was even played. So he was a dream to play with. And obviously he came back on loan for Celtic. He went in Celtic, and I was a big Celtic fan. So I was peppering him with questions all the time, just sit behind him in the bus. He must have been like that all the time. Is this wee guy ever going to stop talking about Celtic?
I can imagine. You would have also worked under, you kind of touched on it right at the start, like Jim Leishman, Davy Hay, John Robertson was there as well as a coach when you first signed. What was it like to work with those guys, and what did you kind of learn off of them?
I learned massive amounts. My very first game for Livi, we played Hearts maybe at Meadowbank in a friendly, and I played. It was a pre-season game, and I actually played in midfield with Robbo. And see, at times, I mean, I'd obviously came for Hamilton, and I'd seen Robbo score hundreds of goals with Hearts. At times, I was thinking, I can't believe I'm actually playing the same team as John Robertson. Do you know what I mean? It was just, it was surreal. But then, as you got to know Robbo as a guy, as a coach, he was an excellent coach. Yeah. His sessions were really, really sharp, and I really enjoyed Robbo's training. You had Leash, who was a brilliant motivator, and Davy I always thought Davy Hay was miles ahead of his time. Just the way he conducted himself, he was a class act, Davy. And let Davy see the way managers are now. Davy wouldn't be out of place at all, working in football. They knew just the way he worked back then. He would fit in it greatly here. mean, nobody messed with Davey. I mean, he was called the silent assassin, but nobody spoke out of turn with him. He was always in control.
Had that kind of instant respect to him, didn't you?
100%. That's exactly it. He did. He just, for what he achieved in the game, and he was such a nice guy as well, Davey. So, but you could tell he had that wee switch, so nobody would ever try and question him.
You made your debut at the end of the 02-03 season, believe at Fir Park in a 6-2 defeat. Obviously, not the best result for us, obviously, but how was that experience on a personal note for you?
It was brilliant. It was obviously it beat 6-2 and say it's brilliant, but it was a real learning curve for me, because believe it or not, I actually done no bad in the game, although we get beat 6-2. James McFadden scored a hat-trick, but I learned so much for that game. Just the time you'll no get in the ball. Maybe if I took a couple of seconds too long in the ball, somebody was there to try and get it off you right away. So that kind of all stuck with me, that you would always get punished a lot more. I'd play in the second division, but he's didn't. Sometimes if you take a wee bit extra time in the ball and you did lose it, you wouldn't get punished. But I felt that day, everything ended on, not just myself. They got punished for it. So it was a big learning curve, and a win I always remember, because obviously it's your debut in the Premier League, and because we get absolutely humped and all that.
You talk about a certain James McFadden scoring a hat-trick as well. Was it obvious then that he was going to go on to become kind of this player playing, you would see on Match of the Day, playing with Everton and Birmingham, etc., and becoming a bit of a talisman for Scotland as well?
Aye, Faddy was exceptional. He just played like he was playing down the park with his mates. That's the way he always played. And that's kind of went out the game as well. Just that kind of carefree attitude. He didn't really bother if he lost the ball when he was trying something. He would get the ball and try the exact same thing. He might lose it again, but then when it came off, it looked unbelievable, and that's the way Faddy played.
I had that bit of arrogance about him, but in a good way.
Yeah. That's the way loads of people used to have. They used to have that kind of arrogance and swagger, and it didn't really. It was like carefree doing the part with your mates. That's the best way I could describe it.
You don't really see it now, do you?
No, not really. You don't really see it. I mean, probably the last one out of that for Scotland, I'd probably say Snoddy. Snoddy, that attitude as well. He played that's the way he played, but he was doing the part with his pals.
Snoddy would have been round about the youth teams at the time you were there as well, wouldn't he?
Aye, Snoddy. I used to give Snoddy a run in. Snoddy lived with me for 3 or 4 months or something. I gave him his dinners and things like that. Just he's a young boy, and he wasn't eating right and things like that. So me and my missus had a spare room, so he stayed with us. He was best man at my wedding a few years ago now.
Well, he was a right character in mind when he first came on the scene. I played on the park at half time. It would have been easy, he kind of broke into the team, and I remember getting a photo with him, and I'm pretty sure if I showed him it now he'd be a bit embarrassed, because he's got the tan and the studs in the ears and everything like that. He's definitely matured over time.
See the picture that was on Twitter the other day? It was like the guy for River City.
River City, yeah.
I'm in a group chat when I posted it right away, and he's like, "What player was that?" I says, "That's a guy for River City, you dough ball." He was like, trying to remember what player it was, know what I mean?
So the following season, you started obviously featuring the first team a lot more. It was a pretty eventful season for the club. First of all, we went into administration. That was just before the League Cup semi-final. So what was the mood like in the dressing room around that sort of difficult time?
It's kind of hard to describe, to be honest with you, Calum. It was, we obviously knew the weeks coming up to it, there was money problems, and we had loads of meetings with administrators and things like that. But then it was the day of the semi-final, we actually went in administration and guys were getting let go. So it was really, really tough, especially for the Spanish guys like Wee Dave and that. They were losing Quino and remember Wanjo Camacho?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, aye.
Camacho, they were away. So Dave was losing. It was like losing his family. Do you know what I mean? Because he'd been earlier with them and kind of went in the same journey with them, coming into Scotland and staying. I think they all stayed round about each other. So it was really, really tough. I mean, you were actually. I know, as an obviously it was actually grown men in tears. That's the way it was.
That's a horrible experience, isn't it? And as you say, the semi-final was the same day, but it must have been quite difficult to pick yourselves up for such an important game like that as well.
See, just looking back now, you can appreciate it a lot more. I mean, to actually get boys who you played with, you were in the trenches with for years, been let go, and then we went on and won that game. That's some achievement. I mean, everybody always talks about Hibs, how they knocked out Celtic and Rangers and that season. But I mean, what we had to come through was equally just as tough as what Hibs had to come through, beating the Old Firm.
And obviously, a semi-final, there isn't really any better way to win a cup semi-final than a last-minute penalty in front of the travelling fans.
I know.
What was that like?
That was one of the best penalties I've ever seen, Derek. I mean,
it's a peach, isn't it?
You could have put 3 goalies in, I don't think he would have saved it. It was just bang. But Dale was just on fire that season, so it was like when he got the penalty, it was like, well, Dale's going to score it. It's no doubt we're going to win the game. Now, sometimes you're nervous a wee bit, but it wasn't like that at all.
Yeah, I just remember that. I don't know why. I always remember the ground being deadly silent when he was going to take the spot kick, and you could actually hear the ball kind of click the net as it went in the top corner. It was an absolute dream. Like, there was a boy next to me. Oh, brilliant! But there was a boy next to me that had put a tenner on Derek Lilley scoring 1-0 Livi or something like that, and he had crazy odds for it. It was brilliant.
But what a season that was! That was, I mean, as hard as it was, the administration, but with the cup and all that, was just incredible.
Yeah.
So just leading up to the cup final, we went in the best of form leading up to the game, and Hibs obviously had the big following, which was well documented. Do you think we were written off a bit? Did folk use that as motivation?
I think because obviously you say about our form wasn't great, but we were doing good in the cups. I always remember, like, because Hibs had beat Rangers and they beat Celtic, it was a case of them. They were only going to beat Livi, and I always remember the night before it, we were in a hotel in East Kilbride, and I used to share a room with Alan Main. So right. I was just a young boy, and I said to Alzo, what do you think tomorrow? We're going to win? He's like, 100%. It's like, I think so. Alan Main was one of my heroes. Alan Main was unbelievable for me. He really looked after me. He was brilliant. So anything Alzo said, I took it as gospel. So that was it. Yeah. The night before, I was like, well, we're going to win. Alzo's told me. You know what I mean? So
we beat Hibs twice that season as well, which I thought, we were above them in the league, but I think just because they had a kind of bigger fall, and obviously, as you touched on, they knocked out Celtic and Rangers, I think they just kind of wrote us off a bit as a formality.
Aye. Well, I always kid on, there's big boy Andy Monroe that plays with Sten. He's a massive Hibs fan. Mm-hmm. I always say to him, I said, Hibs, I says, you used to be your bitches. What are you talking about? Hibs and Aberdeen that season, we had them on toast.
Aberdeen, we played them, 7 times, because we had a replay with them in the cup, and we had them in the League Cup as well, didn't we?
I think we beat them 5 times that year, and we
beat twice.
Aye.
Mental.
They had some team as well, the likes of Scott Brown, Gary O'Connor, Caldwell, all of them, Riordan.
I know, because when people always ask you, who was in that team, you rhyme off the names. Mm-hmm. I'm like, who's beat them? I was like, I didn't bother, Toffee.
Fernandez got Kevin Thompson and Scott Brown to breaking point in that game.
I don't know how Bruni stayed in the park that game.
I was just about to say,
he totally lost the head. I've watched it back a couple of times. I was watching it, I was like, where is Willie Young going? Did I miss it when he gets sent off or something? Because surely he's going to send off.
He was an angry wee guy as well. I remember that Mohican he had.
Aye.
Big red Mohican.
That's right. They all had terrible balance. I'm quite pally with Kev Thompson. He's always taking the piss at himself about his haircuts and all that back then. But and that was some team there. But they're all really good lads, and you can tell with the career they've went and had as well. They've done brilliant things.
Just on the game itself, so what are your memories of the actual game?
I remember in the first half, I was getting an absolute doing, but in my head was still, Alan Main telling me the night before that we're going to win the game. So I was like, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what they do because we're going to win it. And I was out warming up when Dale scored. And then, so I think Dave McNamee was struggling with injury. But the second, I think it was for the second goal. So I was out warming up again with the second goal, and Jamie McAllister broke through. I see Jamie McAllister, I think he scored one goal or something like before that. It was an absolute peach. But see,
he used to do against Motherwell, his other goal.
We used to do shooting and training, and his finishing was unbelievable. So see a guy running 1-on-1, you'd never expect it, thinking a left wing back, you would be really, really competent. But you're thinking, by the way, if you could pick a couple of players to run through 1-on-1, I'd probably pick him and Derek Lilly because Dale was in fire time, which sounds mad for a guy who was playing left wing back, but he had a great season as well. Jamie Owen had a brilliant career, but when he ran through, I thought, oh, that's a goal. Like I said, I'd seen him finishing in training.
The thing I remember most about Jamie McAllister's goal was obviously Lilly had just put his one up, and my dad decided to get his bovril, and he was like, right, I'll have a drink now. And then Fernandez just carved them open, and he's got the top off the bovril, and he's like, yes, go on, yes. And then the bovril just got lodged everywhere. The boy in front got absolutely covered and had no idea that he'd just been absolutely plastered with bovril. But it was my dad turning around to me about 10 minutes later, and he's going, Euan, I've just covered that boy in bovril, but I don't think he's noticed.
That was unbelievable. See, even just going back to the game itself, you look back and see how good Dave Fernandez was that game as well. He was unbelievable.
He got piggybacked up the stairs, did he not, to get his medal?
Aye, but there's a funny story about that. See, Dave obviously went half injured, and he got piggybacked like he couldn't walk. And then see when we went back into the dressing room, everybody was looking for wee Dave, and I think, he must be in with the physios and all that, getting treatment. Dave comes in, skipping about, nothing right. Honestly, everybody was howling, laughing. Couldn't you believe it? Thought wee man was out for the rest of the season. Comes in bouncing up and down, dancing.
Brilliant. that same season, you scored your first senior goal as well against Dundee United. You managed to wangle the SPFL Twitter to get it put up as well a few weeks back. What was that moment like for you? It was quite a peach of a goal as well, actually.
It was one you never forget. I mean, it was your first goal in the Premier League, so it's one you treasure. And I always remember it was a good goal, and I hadn't seen it for about 15 years, but I've made up for that in the last couple of weeks. I think I've watched it 15 years worth of time.
There's another goal I remember you scoring. I was chatting to Bruni about it earlier, and it was when you played the Airdrie. You scored one at Livi, I'm sure.
Oh, that's right.
Being the winner. I think that one was even better. Down at the St Maggie's end, at the top corner, from about 30 yards.
I remember that one as well. It's for Airdrie. I think we beat us 2-1 that game.
Yeah. That was an absolute raker, I remember.
I've managed to score some decent goals in my career. So.
Who would you say it ranks? There was a one recently, I think it was for Steny in the Challenge Cup against Waterford.
Oh, free kick.
Mm-hmm. Where would you say the Dundee United goal ranks?
It's right up there, see, because not even just because, I mean, it was a good finish technically not, but it's always special to me because it was my first goal in the Premier League, do you know what I mean? So that meant a lot to me, so it is definitely right up there.
So we were obviously taking over at the end of the season, and Alan Preston was appointed manager, along with several players moving on. What was the mood like going into the new season?
We'd obviously lost quite a lot of players in that, so and David went, so loads of players weren't too happy with that because of the takeover. I mean, we couldn't believe that they gave Alan Preston the job over Davy. Davy was the reason we'd done so well, and what he'd achieved at the club was unbelievable. So it was kind of we actually nearly left that season. I would nearly sign for Burnley that summer, and I ended up knocking it back, and I signed again for Livingston.
It's quite mad because Pierce Flynn is a massive Celtic fan. You would have thought Davy Hay would have been his ideal manager in the job at that time.
That's what we all thought as well. We're like, I don't know where this has come from. The guy was a mad, self-confessed Celtic daft, so we couldn't believe why he was going to get rid of Davy.
Obviously, it didn't really work out for Preston. It was another eventful season as well with the Great Escape. You find yourself going out on loan to Morton when Richard Gough and Archie Knox came in. What was the thinking behind that move?
I got on brilliant with Archie, but Goughy just never took to me at all. I'd always played for any manager was there, but for whatever reason, Gough he never gave me a sniff. I said Archie was brilliant with me. Archie was constantly telling me he was trying to get me team, getting me in the team and things like that. Archie really appreciated. I mean, I was always a real hard worker and I was decent technically. So Archie appreciated the way I always worked away in training, but for whatever reason, my face didn't fit with Gough. And I think Jim McInally had phoned Archie. They were inquiring about Eastie, I think, Craig Easton.
All right, okay, yeah.
And Archie had said, nah, you don't want Eastie. I've got a boy for you, take Scott Mclaughlin, and that's how it came about. So Archie had recommended me. Yeah,
Archie Knox, I mean, he must have been class to work with as well, going the CV he's got in the game with Sir Alex Ferguson and Walter Smith and everything like that.
Archie was brilliant. His training was just simple stuff, but made sure all the boys enjoyed it. I mean, we'd warm up, maybe do like heated tennis, then you get into wee boxes, keeping possession, into some shooting, and then it wasn't overcomplicated, but the boys loved it. And the way Archie was with the boys, he was another one, dead infectious character, and you wanted to do well for him. Goughy, I wasn't too keen on, but Archie, I really liked.
That obviously spelled the end of your time at Livi. You went to Morton permanently. But overall, how would you reflect on your time at Livingston?
I loved it. I mean, to be honest with you, everybody always asks about any regrets I had. The regret I had was actually I left. To be honest with you, I left too soon, I think. I mean, Paul Lambert had brought me back, and Paul Lambert had kind of played me a wee bit. But see, because I'd went out on loan, I'd played every week, I kind of get the taste of playing at 3 o'clock on a Saturday, and I always on the bench or starting the odd game. I wanted to make sure I was playing every week, and like I said, I did regret it now leaving Livi, because I think I'd have still played a lot more, but I think I just had itchy feet a wee bit to go and to want to go and play, and that's what I've kind of done almost throughout my career. I think I've played for 20 years now, and for the last probably 15, 16 years I've played at least 30 games a season, so I've always enjoyed just playing the game.
Yeah, at the time you moved on from Livi as well, you still would have been a pretty young lad as well. Obviously, as a young player, it's best to go out and play, isn't it?
Aye, definite. But I think if I'd went out and maybe another loan deal, I think that'd have been probably better for myself rather than going on a permanent. I think looking back, I probably should have just went out on loan. But I had a good offer there for Morton. Lambert didn't want to let me go, but I kind of had to convince him that I wanted to just go and play football. So he eventually let me go, and I went to Morton. Like I said, as a regret, I mean, that I didn't stay at Livi longer.
You recently got the chance to come back, and you featured in Keegan Jacobs' testimonial. Was it good to see kind of several faces from that very successful team that you were involved with?
That was a brilliant turnout for Keegan as well. But it was great seeing so many old faces, and I said it's weird in football. Even see if you win something with a bunch of players, see the minute you all get back together, it's like it's never been away from each other. It's a brilliant thing that in football you can get.
I think you were relied on quite a lot in that testimonial game because you still had legs on you in comparison to a few of the points.
I know, tell us about it. See when it was funny, Big Lee had spoke to me before the game. Said, Scotty, obviously you're fit and we're going to play you here. But I just said, just play me anywhere, don't worry. So the boys during the game, obviously I could still move about, like, oh, in there, Scott, in there, in there. And then I think they put on, I think it was the chef or something like that for a cut for like 5-10 minutes.
Okay, yeah.
You could see all the guys looking at me as if, Scott, you can't gaff. You're basically the only one that can run now. Don't gaff. So I was there for like 5 minutes, and at least she's like that to me. Scotty, going to have to put you back on. I was like, no, you're bothering me. So put the chef back off again. He was on for about 5 minutes.
The other thing I remember is now that you touched upon Mako giving you a bit of the kind of tough love treatment, was I was in at work and Stuart Lovell was in about a week or two after the testimonial game, and I was talking about how Lee Makel two-footed Gary Holt's laddie Ben.
That's right, aye.
And Stuart was like, I'm kind of to blame for that, because I said to Lee, I was like, you can't be getting done by a 16-year-old. And then 2 minutes later, Lee just flew through him. Did it bring back memories for you now that you've mentioned that?
Aye, I was usually on the other end of that, and that was in a game, that was in training. So I know exactly what Archie's talking about there. Just touching on Archie there. I mean, Archie Lovell, I mean, he's the best captain I ever played under. He was, I mean, I was a top player, Archie, but see as a captain, the way he dealt with everything, he was top class, and he's been one of my biggest influences throughout my career, just trying to conduct myself the way Archie did.
There's another one now you touched on, Stuart Lovell. It was making me feel old now. I was mascot, and Stuart Lovell was out injured. They had quite a serious knee injury. I think it would have been the season we were in Europe. Mm-hmm. And obviously you're in the dressing room, and Archie liked a wee bet. And he used to try and wind Marvin Andrews up, kept asking him for tips on the horses, and Marvin's walking about, it's blasphemy.
Well, that's it. He used to come in in the morning, and he said, "Oh, I've got the Bible with me," and that was the Racing Post. That's what he used to call the Bible.
Brilliant.
So during lockdown, you've been keeping yourself occupied, doing a fair bit of running. It's safe to say. Yep. You've set a challenge for your followers on Twitter, which Euan's actually been getting involved in. But just explain the challenge that you've set. The
challenge. See, initially I was running 5Ks, and I just posted sometimes, and people were getting in touch saying, "Oh, that's quite a good time." But I knew I was quite a good long distance runner. But then, as it went on, there was loads of people messaging me saying, "I really wish I could. I wish I could run. This is just normal people, no football players are in." So I was like trying to convince them that they could. I'm like, "Oh no, I could never run." So it was me and Snoddy on the phone to each other, and I said, loads of people messaged, let's try and start something. So I says, no, what? Snoddy, I says, why don't, see, instead of a 5K, I says, why don't I set the Scotty 1K challenge? I says, name can do it. I says, it doesn't need to be fast. I says, they can walk it, jog it, they can do a mix of walking and jogging. And I said, the response to it's been unbelievable. It's really took off. It's took off a lot better than even I thought. And the amount of people sending messages, it's they're saying that I'm motivating them. But see, now they're actually motivating me to the nice messages they're sending me. People who've never ran before, or maybe they did run 5-6 years ago and they decided to dig their running shoes out again. It's been absolutely brilliant.
Perfect time to do it, isn't it? Because you've not got a lot to occupy yourself.
Aye. Well, I'm quite a hyper guy, so see, actually sitting about the house, that doesn't work for me. So I need to go and do something. And see, tomorrow I'm actually running a marathon.
I saw that, yeah.
Aye, I'm running a marathon tomorrow. I don't know if I've bit off more than I can chew, but I said if people are struggling that think they can't run, and that's a chance for them, it's running a K. It's a chance for me running 42 and a bit. So we'll see how it goes. I'm looking forward to it anyway.
I expect the time to be posted as well.
Oh, aye. Posted. It might be posted in like a calendar in days, but
what about that Laura Woods? There was a bit of beef there. I don't know if it was you particularly, but she was having a go at all the runners. The Sky Sport.
The average Joe's comment.
I mean that really did stick to me. I mean I was raging all day with that because like the message I'd been getting, people who'd maybe been struggling with mental health and things like that, and they've saying, see, for me who is a fit guy, see me posting around somebody having a go at it doesn't bother me. But somebody who's putting themselves out there who isn't too fit, who can't go and talk to their mates about it, they're thinking, right, I'll create a bit of accountability, I'll put it on my social media. So for somebody to try to turn that back on them and say, oh, just average Joes, that could absolutely destroy somebody who has actually went out on a limb to go, I'm going to post that and I'm going to show people that I'm running. I mean, that could destroy somebody who is struggling with mental health or overweight and they're trying to do something about it. So I said I was raging with that.
The thing that irritated me was she was like, I want to see Mo Farah's times. But for me, I can relate a lot more to the average Joe going out running than bloody Mo Farah.
Of course you do, but exactly, because that's the thing. I see like Mo Farah. Everybody knows Mo Farah can run a marathon in whatever time. He can run a 5k rapid, but you don't know what Euan and Calum Brown can do. And so actually seeing what you can do, and they'll say that's somewhat much more appealing to me.
You don't want to see what I can do it in.
See, as long as you're out there and moving, that's the main thing.
True, yeah, true.
Exactly. Scott, it's been an absolute privilege chatting to you today. Really appreciate you taking the time to have a chat with us as well. Obviously, it goes without saying, take care of yourself and the family, and hopefully you'll get back playing football soon.
Hopefully. Cheers. You guys take care as well.
We've teamed up with Livi defender Nicky Devlin to bring you Devlin's Dilemmas. We've been posting the dilemmas on our social media over the last few weeks, but now it's our turn to debate the pros and cons of each of them. So let's hear what the first Devlin dilemma was.
Would you rather be locked in a room full of snakes or locked in a room full of spiders?
It's got to be a room full of spiders, surely, no?
I don't know, like, I think both of them are creepy wee bastards. Excuse the language.
I'm with you, Semple. I think both of them are creepy. Spiders, I mean, they move like the speed of light. They can hide anywhere. Spiders? They have 8 legs, man.
Spiders are tiny, man.
And they're hairy.
Aye, but a room
Full of spiders. All crawling
full of
over
snakes.
you.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. They're tiny, mate.
Is there not something that you sleep at night, you eat like, I don't know, over the course of a year, like 40 spiders in the course of a year you eat during your sleep?
I don't know about
Like
your
that's
diet, mate, but I don't.
But going by the size of you, Andy, that wouldn't surprise me if you ate 40 spiders a year.
No, but seriously, back on topic, they're both creepy. I mean, you've got one wee slimy bastard and one wee 8-legged, like, hairy bastard. Room full of them, I'm struggling. Like, I'm finding it tough for both of them.
I'm generally totally fine with spiders. Snakes, I'd think I'd be all right with, but again, it's like I would much prefer to be in a room of spiders. I think snakes are a bit more. They're a lot more dangerous. I think a spider's just could crawl on you. What damage could it really do? As opposed to.
To be fair, we don't know the specifics of what type of snake. Or
yeah, you're right. I was going to come on with that.
Well, we could have, when he says spider, it could be a tarantula. We're not talking just a typical house spider. We're talking big, massive, bloody tarantulas, right?
You're right.
The snakes could be little, innocent little snakes that can't do anything to you. Yeah, they might nip you or whatnot, but it doesn't cause you any fatal kind of.
I do think snakes are more dangerous though overall. Like they can strangle you, they can bite you, things like that. And they're a lot bigger as well. Usually.
We've got Bear Grylls joining us. No, we don't have Bear Grylls. Not that big thing.
But you can eat both as well, though. Going back to food.
Why are you on about food again?
No, well, we're talking. Ewan mentioned Bear Grylls. Now I remember watching a program saying use what's there, and I'm sure he ate spiders and snakes. And we all watch I'm a Celebrity.
Andy's approach to getting out this room is to eat the room.
So surely you prefer spiders then, because they're a lot smaller.
But there's more. There's more meat on a snake.
Andy, this isn't about filling your stomach. Stop making this about food.
Yeah, sorry. Okay. I would probably go with. Would I rather spend more room with snakes or spiders? Spiders, probably.
I'd probably just go spiders, but I'd rather just no be in the room. Be honest.
Here. Agreed.
Yeah, no brainer for me. Spiders, definitely. Next up was this dilemma.
Would you rather be stuck in lockdown with Effie Ambrose and Marvin Bartley, or John Guthrie and Stretch?
Personally, I would rather spend lockdown with Big Bad John and Stretch. The reason being, Marvin Bartley would just be talking about Charlie Austin, his best mate, and I feel like Effie Ambrose would continuously break lockdown rules. He would just go wandering outside. and you'd constantly need to be, you know, a bit like he does occasionally on the pitch, just goes for a wee wander, and you need to be constantly on guard to stop him going out for that second walk. I just think that would become tiresome, whilst I think John and Stretch, well behaved, like you get good chat out of them. Stretch is a right good laugh, John's a good laugh as well, so that would be my preference.
It is a really tough one, isn't it? Personally, a wee bit of a cop-out, in fact. I'm really copping out. I would go for Marvin Bartley and Effie Ambrose purely because we've interviewed both Gary Malley and I personally interviewed Gary Malley for the programme, and we've interviewed John Guthrie for the podcast. So just I've never really spoken to Marvin Bartley or Effie Ambrose. I think they'd have some great stories and things like that. Guthrie,
how many podcasts would you be planning on doing with them in lockdown? Been 6 weeks already.
Well, just a chat. I think Effie Ambrose has played Champions League football and things like that. Bartley's played high level down south. I just think they'd be a great chat, to be honest.
Can we just put it out here for the listeners that we've been on Marvin Bartley's case for the entire season, and he continues to refuse the podcast. But then when we go into the club to do the recordings, he'll always moan that we've never asked him to do an interview. So we'll just throw it out there. So Marvin, if you do listen, and you said you did in the past, then the option's still there to be interviewed. Give us a shout. On the question itself, I'm kind of going with you, Euan. I think Guthrie would make the tea. Me and Big Mally would scoff it down. And in the other room, Bartley would probably have me doing exercises and God knows what else. Not my thing on lockdown. And yeah, Ambrose, I'm not sure how interesting he would be, to be honest. I know he's played a lot of high-level football, but I get the impression of Effie that he's a bit monotone. So, yeah, I'm going to go John Guthrie and Stretch, just for, those reasons. So, there we go.
Effie, if you're listening, we're looking forward to not having you on the podcast due to Andy's comments there. Now we've got a little fast food dilemma for you.
After lockdown, will you be going to McDonald's, KFC or Burger King first?
Andy, we'll go over to you first for this one, the fast food.
As the fast food expert, Andrew Semple, take it away.
I thought this one was a no-brainer, to be honest. Out of those choices, McDonald's would be the obvious one for me. I know that that's an unpopular opinion in this chat, but I think it was the one that won the most votes. Give me a Big Mac meal over some chicken and a really expensive burger for Burger King any day. McDonald's for me.
Honestly, not a fan of McDonald's. Not a fan of it at all, unless I'm absolutely hammered at 3 o'clock in the morning. Give me a 20 box of nugs. But you know what? I can get chicken at KFC. So KFC would have been my preference. McDonald's would have been last for me.
Really? Last?
Yeah, I would have had a Burger King over McDonald's.
Wow. Shocked.
So KFC would have won the vote.
Boneless banquet for me, easy days. Unreal. Absolutely
Really?
craving one, now that we've mentioned it as well.
Bruni, some folk give you stick, but sometimes you're alright, mate.
Appreciate that. Right, so final dilemma now.
Would you rather see your team win the Champions League or your country win the World Cup?
I think this was probably the toughest one of them all, in my opinion. Euan, we'll throw over to you first. What would you say?
I mean, if you asked me this again tomorrow, I'd probably have changed my mind. But I think, having done a few Scotland away trips, and the one that kind of springs to mind when I think about how the country would become absolute pandemonium if we were to win the World Cup, was when I was over in Brussels last summer and we'd just been scudded 3-0, and there was folks spilling out pubs and everything like that in the centre of Brussels. It was like you would have thought we'd won, the way the Scotland fans were partying. So I can only imagine what Scotland would be like if we actually were to even qualify for the World Cup, never mind win it. Obviously, getting to see your club team go and lift the Champions League would be amazing as well. But World Cups are only every 4 years. Champions League, you've got a yearly opportunity if you qualify for it, obviously.
Yeah, you're right, Calum. This is the toughest one, and I've been kind of to and fro with my answer on this one for the last wee while, try to decide. And I think because it would be absolutely brilliant to lord over the English for the next 50 years, as they've done for us, mentioning the year that we might win that World Cup over and over every year for a period of time would be tremendous. But I feel
England
like
win the World Cup.
I feel like I have a far more affinity with my club football. So I'm like you, Euan. At the moment, I'm opting for Champions League, but it would probably change tomorrow, and then the next day it would change back. It's a very difficult one, but I think I would go for Champions League with Livingston.
Yeah, I am not Champions League. I would go World Cup. I'm the exact same as you, and I just imagine the party, and again, you mentioned as well, Andy, getting one over on England. My mum's English, so I think it would be class. Half my family are English, so I'd absolutely love it. And we'd have bragging rights all over the world. Yeah,
not just Europe, world.
So yeah, a big thank you to Nicky Devlin for getting involved with the podcast and giving us this brilliant mini series that we've got going. Hopefully we've got many more to come over the next few weeks.
That's it for another special episode of TalkLivi. Obviously, with no football, it's hard to roll out our usual weekly episodes, but we will endeavour to keep bringing you content as often as we can. So thank you for your patience and continued support.
You can find TalkLivi in the usual places, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, by just searching for TalkLivi. Hit like and follow so you don't miss anything we do. You can also find this episode and all our other episodes on all good podcast streaming sites, including iTunes, Spotify, Castbox, plus loads more.
All of these episodes are also on our website, talklivipodcast.libsyn.com. We're also on YouTube. You can find us there by searching TalkLivi. If you could hit the subscribe button, we'd really appreciate it. And if you want, we'd also really appreciate if you could leave a review on iTunes or on YouTube and comment on the videos there.
That's it for this week. As I said earlier, we'll try and put out as much content as we can going forward, so keep your eyes peeled for new episodes. Special thanks to Scott Mclaughlin for chatting to us and being so accommodating as well, giving us some great insight into past players and management, and of course to you all for listening. So from Andy, Calum and myself, stay safe and thanks again for listening.
West Lothian is our battle cry. This is the place from which we hail. Livingston, oh Livingston, it's up to Amberville. Livingston, 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 oh Livingston. We love it when you score. Livingston, oh Livingston, the Amberville Lions roar. Livingston, oh Livingston, we realize our vision. Livingston, oh Livingston, to the Premiership.